May 15th, 2020, the economy begins to slowly open. Welcome to another edition of Coronavirus and Commercial Real Estate. I'm your host, George Morales of Blue Box Real Estate. We are your commercial real estate voice for South Florida. We provide commercial real estate solutions for office tenants and office landlords. Find us at www.blueboxre.com. Well, we have transitioned this podcast with videocast, and I'm glad to do it, to a weekly look at commercial real estate and coronavirus. For about 6-7 weeks there, the news cycle was changing, shifting every other day. So we went to a bi-weekly look at commercial real estate and coronavirus. Things are slowing down. The economy is beginning to open. By May 15th, Florida has been into phase one. Even South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach have transitioned into phase one. And we're starting to see restaurants open up at 25% capacity, beaches starting to open next week, and so forth. So I sense there's a little bit light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, at Blue Box Real Estate, we've had some clients reach us. We've had some new prospects contact us, and it seems like there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, a little bit of life coming back to the business community. So we're happy to transition these to a weekly look. So look for us on Fridays, and God willing, once coronavirus is well behind us, we'll continue to survey the landscape of commercial real estate nationally and locally and bring you relevant articles and trends for your business. So let's jump right in to the first article, which comes to us from the South Florida Business Journal. Is reopening at 25% capacity worth it? Restaurant owners weigh cost of opening doors for some dine-in customers. It's a well-written article. The biggest obstacle for Lalo Durazo, he is manager of Jaguar Hospitality Group, and they own several restaurants throughout South Florida. The biggest obstacle for him, he said, is a 25% capacity restriction put on restaurants statewide thus far. Durazo said that there are a lot of costs associated with reopening, and the amount of revenue likely to be brought in the limited capacity would not be enough to cover sourcing new orders of food, paying more staff, covering higher costs for utilities. The minute you open the door, you incur costs on paying, things like gas, electricity, staff, etc., he said. All that is costly, and you still don't know if you're even going to be selling. Even at 50% capacity, it would be difficult to break even at his restaurants, which include Peacock Garden Cafe in Coconut Grove and Bacan and Wynwood. He said, everybody involved, including suppliers, employees, landlords, will need to agree to cuts for revenue to cover cost at this capacity, he said. Now, he's bringing a great point. If you could only operate your restaurant at 25% capacity while you're paying 100% of cost, that doesn't work. I mean, simple math. Are you paying your staff 25% of their salary? Are you paying 25% of your food costs? Now, granted, you're not ordering as much food, maybe you don't have as much staff, but you still have 100% of the rent to carry. That electric bill, the air conditioning bill, the water, the gas, that's still at 100%. So if you took out a small business loan or home equity line of credit to open that restaurant, you still have to pay that. And sure, the PPP has come in to help keep your employees afloat, but as this article points out, that's not the panacea as well. Let's continue with the article. At Jackson's Ice Cream Parlor and Restaurant in Dania Beach, owner Linda Udell Zekheim said she plans to open on day one, no matter the capacity limit. Even at 25% capacity will likely be a sizable jump from the revenue her restaurant is currently bringing in through delivery and takeout orders. So I guess it's a nice jump for those who've been able to do delivery and takeout. But if you're a sit-down formal dining restaurant and you haven't been able to do takeout, there's no way you can run your restaurant at 25% capacity. We still have to look at the bottom line, she said. 25% is still much better than we had before. While Governor Ron DeSantis has not formally announced Broward restaurants can reopen on Monday, this coming Monday, Zakheim has already begun rehiring some of her 80-person team. She said the business has already received its paycheck protection funds, but she can't afford to rehire employees she doesn't yet need. I can't have 40 people sitting in the restaurant with no job to do, he said. There you go. So part of the paycheck protection program is you have to rehire everyone back within a certain amount of time. Well, what if we don't get to 100% capacity within that certain amount of time? You can't rehire all your employees if you're running at 25 or 50% capacity. So a lot of unanswered questions for the restaurant business, which is, as we'll see, the industry that's been hurt the most with these government shutdown. So anyhow, that's the first article. Is reopening at 25% worth it? My prediction is most restaurants are probably going to hold off yet. If they haven't already been doing takeout and delivery, if they're formal dining, they're going to wait till they get to a place where they feel they can break even at least. The next article is interesting. Now, this is a private sector response. So really what we're doing is we just reviewed a public sector response. Now, this is private sector. This is coming from Globe Street. Thank you, Erica Morphy. Brookfield launches $5 billion retail revitalization program. Okay. Brookfield launches a $5 billion revitalization program. Brookfield Asset Management has launched what it is calling a retail revitalization program that will recapitalize retail business in the major markets where Brookfield has a presence. Brookfield said it's targeting $5 billion to seed the program. The program will be funded by Brookfield and its institutional partners and will make non-control investments in retail businesses that need capital. So they're providing capital in exchange for a non-controlling interest. There's always a give and take. But listen, if you're taking the PPP program or you're taking a small business loan, you're going into partnership with the government. And as well, there's something that they're giving and taking, whether it's interest or whatever it is. But continue with the article. This program will be led by Ron Bloom, managing partner and vice chairman of Brookfield's private equity group. He was a principal architect of restructuring the automobile industry on behalf of the U.S. government during the 2008 financial crisis. Quoting from Ron, "This initiative is being designed to assist medium-sized enterprises in getting back on their feet," he said in prepared remarks. "We believe this is a critical component to getting the economy moving again, and we would like to partner with companies and entrepreneurs that can draw on our capital and expertise to stabilize and grow their business," he says. And that's where the article ends. So we don't know how they're going to do that. What's the application process? Are they only doing it for their tenants, or are they opening it up in the markets in which they own property and are already active in? We don't know. But here comes the $5 billion stimulus package from Brookfield from the private sector, and we have to applaud that anytime we see that. Well, we're going to CoStar, and they wrote an article on the latest jobs report that came out early May, which reflected back on April's job losses. And the title of the article is "Latest Jobs Report Shows Millions Stuck in Unemployment Limbo." Now, this is good and bad. This is good and bad. So bringing some perspective to those big numbers is the subheading of the article. Unemployment limbo. What do we mean by that? Well, many jobs have not been permanently laid off. They've been furloughed. They've been temporarily laid off until the economy opens. We just heard about Jackson's Ice Cream wanting to bring back their employees, but they can't. So those employees technically they're unemployed, but they're not permanently unemployed. Reading from the article, the April jobs report will likely be the most unique economic data release of our lifetimes. It was a big number. Well, a big negative number, 20.5 million jobs lost. To put that number into perspective, the chart below, and I have the chart right here, the chart below graphs the monthly change in non-farm payrolls going back to 1948. Look at that. So you get to 2020 and it's just a skydive straight down. It's a fall off a cliff. It looks like a cliff, said one person in the article. Well, continuing with the article, if the workers who were recorded as employed but absent from work due to other reasons had been classified as unemployed or temporary layoff, the overall unemployment rate would have been almost 5 percentage points higher than reported. So in the unemployment report, there were many of the 5% who claimed other reasons for being unemployed. And right now, the unemployment rate for April shows a 14.7%. And I think what CoStar is saying, the actual unemployment is closer to 20%, 19.7% if you factor in those who checked other reasons. But for data purposes, you can't do that. So again, the government's going to show you the 14.7%, but there's another 5% that's unemployed that for whatever reason checked off the wrong box or another box. Continuing with this article, millions are unsure where they stand with employees. So this is interesting, and this might be a silver lining. Look at this chart right here. Look at this chart. So this is a little convoluted. The line that CoStar wants you to focus on is the yellow line, not the green line. The green line is where the unemployment is, where it just shot up. Look at the yellow line. Let me read from the article. All of these lines show deep distress in the U.S. economy on an unprecedented scale, with 1/5 of the economy all but literally in limbo. 1/5 of the economy in limbo. But focus on the yellow line, those who have been permanently laid off. Out of the 4 series, this is the only one not to set a new record, and perhaps even it's encouraging. So you've got a red line that's unemployed but not paid. You've got a green line, unemployed on temporary layoff. That's the one that's through the roof. You've got blue, not in the labor force, want a job, not discouraged. Not sure who that is. And unemployed is the yellow line, not on temporary layoff, meaning they're permanently laid off. The yellow line are those who have been permanently laid off. Out of the 4 series, there's only one not to set a new record. Only 1.6% of the labor force has permanently been laid off. Still far below what we saw in 2008 and even lower than year-end in 2007. So still not good. It's still far below what we saw in 2008. But the article points out, of course, the longer the crisis persists, the more flows we will see from the green and orange series into this. So keep an eye out for the movement on the next reports. The May job reports can be very important because now we have gotten into economies that are opening across the United States. And the question is, how many of those jobs are going to come back quickly, or how many jobs are just not going to come back? But thus far, praise God, only 1% of the labor force has been permanently laid off. Everyone else of the 15, 16, 17% unemployment that we've picked up above that are temporarily laid off and hopeful to come back. I know we have family members, one in a dental practice, they've all come back already. So I'm hearing more and more folks who are coming back. The breadth of the job loss, continues the article, meanwhile, is similarly astounding. Of 31 major employment sectors, 27 set a single month record for job loss. Only utilities, telecom, and other information sectors and the federal government did not shed jobs at record pace. Go figure. The federal government did not share job at record pace. And weeks ago, we put up a hashtag, share the pain government. All these government bureaucrats who are mandating the private sector to shut down should have themselves shut down or at least furloughed their income in order to feel the same pain, in order to come up with solutions to get us open back quicker. But only utilities, telecom, and the federal government did not shed jobs at a record pace. Here is the chart. Worst month ever for basically everyone. Other sectors, let's see here, restaurant and bars bore the brunt of the weakness, with the numbers of people employed in this sector at the lowest ever recorded since the BLS broke it out as its own sector in 1990. Okay, Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's BLS. You think that's bad? Non-durable goods manufacturing unemployment was at the lowest ever since 1940. Other sectors setting unfortunate records include accommodation, the lowest since December of 1983. That was a good year. Dentist offices since March of 1986. Arts and entertainment recreation since 1990. Retail employment since 94. Other services, think repairmen, barbers. They have the largest job loss since 1996. Even warehousing and storage has lost 74,000 jobs. So there's a look at the April labor statistics and what's going on. Again, silver lining, only 1.6 have permanently been laid off. That means there's hope as the economy opens and we don't experience, God willing, a second wave. And I saw an article recently that said that these states who've been opening have not experienced a spike as Dr. Fauci and others have been warning would happen. Well, it's not happening. You know, their data has just not been accurate, let's be honest. If other data, if CoStar's data was as inaccurate as Fauci's and the CDC's and the World Health Organizations, they'd be out of business. But so they have not been accurate. Praise God, they haven't been accurate, and it's been better, right? It hasn't been worse, because it could have been inaccurate in another direction. But praise God, it's been a lot better than what they predicted. And of course, they're predicting doom and gloom if we open the economy, but the statistics are not pointing that out, and we need to be thankful. The next 2 articles deal with a continued theme, and this article comes to us from the business journals, and it's regarding an exclusive reader poll. Businesses win breaks on rents, mortgages as pressure builds in the office market. So the next 2 articles, this one comes from perspective of the tenant, office tenants, and what they're seeing in terms of rent relief from their landlords. And then the next article is going to give us the landlord's perspective. So again, thank you, Craig, M. Douglas. The coronavirus shock to the retail and hotel markets is spreading to office parks and high-rise towers in central business districts, challenging the notion that the nation's white-collar services sector is weathering the pandemic better than most. The May 8th survey results were derived from 1,441 respondents who identified either as a landlord or as a tenant, with responses roughly split among the surveys. Takers in suburban markets versus central business districts. So you had, it's a great smorgasbord of respondents. You've got landlords, you've got tenants, you've got landlords and tenants in suburban markets, you've got landlords and tenants in central business districts. So let's see what the survey resulted in. Approximately 3 in 4 respondents said that they occupied or owned office properties in these locations. The big takeaway among all respondents, requests for rent relief mounted, and in most cases were granted. As the economy transitioned from slight turbulence during the pandemic's early days in February to a full-blown state of crisis by the end of April. Some 84% who identified as landlords said they had discussed rent discussions with tenants during that span, with nearly all of those respondents. 81% of all landlords surveyed having agreed to some form of forbearance or payment reductions heading into their May rent period. Did you hear that, tenants? Office tenants? 81% of landlords responded that they have granted some form of rent forbearance or reduction heading into May. Now let me question, how's your landlord treating you? Contact us, please. If you're anywhere in the state of Florida, info@blueboxre.com. Let's put it right there at the bottom. info@blueboxre.com. We've had our own clients, and we already know what's happening and not happening within South Florida. We're happy to lend a hand. We're happy to mediate those discussions with your landlord if you need some type of rent forbearance or rent relief. But listen, I can even send you this article. 81% of landlords are working with their tenants. And that was what I figured would happen. South Florida specifically, our backyard market, we've got a lot of great landlords in town who will do the right thing, and a lot of tenants who want to do the right thing. So it's key to communications. Continuing with the article, among landlords who have granted some form of concession, 71% said they agreed to rent forbearance or temporary suspension of lease payments for tenants. Within the same group of respondents, 38% said they agreed to lower rents for some tenants. So there you go. Rent forbearance, lower rent. The key is communications. The article continues. Among landlords who did contact lenders or loan servicers for some form of debt service help, 69% said their requests have been granted as of the survey date. So even lenders on a large clip are working. We're all seeing this shock to the system is unprecedented, and we have to work together, tenants, landlords, lenders, to get through this. And almost 70% of lenders have responded favorably to help landlords weather the storm. The survey, conducted by the American City Business Journals on behalf of its 43 newsrooms, also made clear April was a particularly ugly month for tenants and landlords alike. While negotiations with tenants were minimal, in February, about 24% of the landlords said they had been approached by tenants seeking relief by March. A month later, the quotient had spiked to 90%. So really, March, we had the last 2 weeks of March where there was this coronavirus shutdown shock. And only 24% of tenants said we need help. Now, by the time April came along, 90% of tenants are asking for help. According to these landlords, the Business Journal's poll identified a silver lining to the commercial real estate market's mounting distress, that being the fact that most tenants, 84%, said they were either current on their leases by negotiating relief with their landlords, had avoided default as of May 6th, 7th survey period. However, long that might last is debatable. 91% of tenants said that their business was negatively affected by the pandemic, with around 1 in 3 claiming to have closed completely since March. Another ominous sign of the tenants who were not current half stopped paying rent altogether. Like landlords surveyed by the Business Journals, most tenants said they first made appeals for relief in April. So again, there's some roadblocks ahead on this recovery, and that is that several tenants have just stopped paying rent altogether. 84% of tenants were current, but only because they negotiated and avoided defaults with their landlords. So how long will that continue? Depends on how long the economy stays stifled by our government officials. The next article is entitled, Working with Struggling Tenants. This is what landlords need to do to protect themselves. And this is from Globe Street. Thank you, Globe Street. Les Shaver of Globe Street. Thank you, Les. Even if a landlord offers rent relief to a tenant, there's no guarantee that the retailer will survive. Now, they're pointing to retailers. This applies just as much to office tenants. And the question that the article is really going to dive into, if you offer rent relief, but will they be able to survive? That's why tenants have to be willing to be open book, and landlords have to take a look. And really, they're looking at it as an investment. If I invest in your company to get through the next 3, 4, 5 months, are you going to be there in months 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to help pay back some of that forbearance or to get back to a stabilized situation? With quoting from the article, and this is a quote from Stephen Solomon, of locally based managing shareholder at the law firm Gray Robinson. He says, with large retailers and probably more so with small local businesses, there's no certainty that they will make it. In certain markets like Florida, the summer months are traditionally not strong. So if you're opening a business in June, there's no holidays or tourism, and there are no holidays, and tourism is low and probably will be even further depressed by people's reluctance to travel. Great point. The retail sector, and we've done some retail leases before, they usually have blackout periods. If you're a restaurant, you're building out your space, you say, I am not opening between the months of May through August. Those are the dead months because you've got all the snowbirds who are here from, say, October through April. That's the hot season for the restaurant business. So telling restaurants to open now in May at 25% capacity in the middle of the dead season, there may be restaurants who can't hold on until September, October, if there is a snowbird season this year. And that's what Steve Solomon is pointing out. I think it's a great, great point. Eventually, the landlord may have to make a hard decision. He continues, there's going to be a point where a landlord needs to make a business decision because they can provide the accommodations, reductions, deferrals, and it may not be enough to jumpstart the business, Solomon says. Even if you gave them free rent, some are not going to make it. To protect themselves, Solomon advises his landlord clients to draft forbearance agreements, which include bankruptcy-specific provisions. There are provisions in a forbearance agreement that protect the landlord in the event of a tenant's bankruptcy that would not otherwise be enforceable in the underlying lease, Solomon says. When a bankruptcy case is filed, the automatic stay is triggered. The automatic stay is a provision of the bankruptcy code which prohibits the continuation or commencement of litigation, Solomon says. The automatic stay is intended to give the debtor breathing room while attempting to reorganize. There are many lease agreements which contain waivers of the automatic stay. So there you go. Landlords, continue with the article, let's just finish it off. When landlords and tenants are working through defaults favorably and outside of the court system, a forbearance or lease amendment after a workout, which contains a waiver of the automatic stay, is more likely to be enforced by the bankruptcy court, according to Solomon. So, this is a big picture article for landlords as well. They want to help their tenants, but at the same time, they don't want to end up with quote unquote egg on their face. They don't want to defer or defray rent and then find out later that the tenant still can't make it or pay it. And it's a double damage for the landlord. They've extended rent credits or rent deferrals, so they're not collecting the income, but they're still paying the mortgage with the intentions of bringing them back, and then they still end up defaulting. It would have been better to just shake hands, close doors earlier on, so they had more time to backfill and find another tenant. So again, a lot of discussions going on, but I think this is helpful to take a look at for any office tenants that are listening, to see there's another side of the coin here, and the landlords themselves have to do what they can to protect their business, which is running that real estate. The next article, and we're down to 2 more. WeWork is always in the news. We could always pick a WeWork article and discuss it, but this one comes to us again from Globe Street. A WeWork agreement is not a lease, and why this matters now. And listen, tenants, if you're in co-working, pay attention. There's a huge difference between being in a co-working environment and a traditional lease environment. And this article beautifully points that out. It said the need to add, it talks about over the last decade, there's been a great increase on flexibility and so forth. However, the need for added flexibility came with a shift away from traditional leasing models. So how is the legal relationship different? And what are the implications for services such as WeWork? What does the new paradigm mean for the co-workers and space providers, particularly in the wake of COVID-19? So now the article continues, co-working agreements versus leases. Space as a service agreement or a co-working agreements are licenses, which are separate and distinct from leases. I'm not sure if folks realize that. That's a license you're signing. It's not a lease. By design, a co-working agreement provides the licensor, WeWork, with more flexibility, and legally they are more like a gym or a club membership. Flexibility and the retention of control, however, may have unintended consequences of licensors having heightened responsibilities to their customers. WeWork. So pay attention here. There's flexibility. If someone doesn't pay rent on a traditional office lease, you have to go through a certain process. And we've covered that in past videocasts, including the Don't Sign the Lease podcast. I encourage you to listen. In fact, one of our recent episodes, we interviewed a contract law attorney and discussed breaches of contract, and we went through specifically that process. Not so in a license agreement. It's like a gym membership. You don't pay your gym membership to Planet Fitness. It's canceled. It's canceled. You're done. You go, they say you're canceled. You can't come in until you become current. You can't do that in a traditional lease. You can't just keep someone from their space. Continuing the article, the biggest difference in these two types of agreements is a lease gives a tenant more control, such as exclusive possession of a space. But in co-working agreements, the licensor maintains control, WeWork maintains control, and the tenants must share their workspace and all the amenities. In a traditionally leased building, tenant spaces are not shared and common areas are limited to parking decks, cafes, elevators, fitness centers, restrooms, lobbies, and shared conference room. In a co-working environment, every area is a common area and no tenant has exclusive control over any area. The licensor maintains control over the space. You're like, well, that's great. It works great in a non-pandemic world. But now that we have coronavirus, the article continues. The licensor may have greater duties to warn licensees of conditions and risks and to abate conditions that pose risk of harm, to be more diligent in determining whether there's potential for COVID-19 exposure in the workplace, and to take extra precautions to implement and enforce rules such as wearing masks, to notify customers of risk, and to sanitize common areas to mitigate risk to which other coworkers are exposed. So there's going to be a greater responsibility and liability on the licensor, co-work providers, Spaces, Regis, WeWork, Mindspace, and others, in order to handle this pandemic and respond to it, because they're providing most of the space. They're in control of most of the space, whereas in an office building, they're responsible for the smaller footprint of common areas. A co-working licensor, however, must continue to make the space and amenities available in order to meet his contractual obligations, even if its members cannot and do not use them. By remaining open and continuing to provide services, a breach of contract on the part of the service provider is more likely foreclosed, and its members are faced with the choice of terminating their agreement, if the agreement allows such termination, or breaching the agreement and providing that a defense such as frustration of purpose, which is more difficult to prove, should apply. We discussed frustration of purpose in the Don't Sign the Lease podcast. So there you have it. There's a lot of differences between what you're holding in your hand, what you signed with WeWork versus what you signed in a traditional lease. A very fascinating article raising great questions of what's going to happen and how that's going to play out. Well, I did see, I don't have it posted here, I couldn't find it again, but between WeWork and a lot of these co-working groups, just in New York alone, in Manhattan, they have about 11 million square feet or more. And so how this is going to flush out, remember, WeWork signs a 20-year lease most likely, and in many cases, 15, 20 years. They're committing to pay rent to a landlord. Meanwhile, their licensees are signing month to month or year to year and can walk out, and many have and many are. I heard from one in Miami Beach this past week. So how that business model is going to work, we don't know. There was a lot of underlying health conditions in WeWork's business model that if coronavirus hits and they're a casualty, you can blame some of it on Corona, but they were a sinking ship anyway, unless they dramatically changed operations. So that's going to be interesting to continue to track. The last article is for our New York friends, our Northeastern friends, and we want to cover this from the perspective of, listen, it is sunny and shiny in South Florida. Our average temperatures are around 77 degrees year round. And sure, we go into hurricane season here and there, but all our houses are built to hurricane codes now, or most of them are. You can put impact windows, shutters, mitigate that. But besides that, what a wonderful place to have your business located. You have homestead exemption rights. Personally, there's no state income tax. It's a very friendly very friendly from a tax haven perspective, community, which is South Florida for the business community, Florida in general. But here's what you don't have in South Florida in the month of May, and this comes to us from The Guardian, okay? And this article is entitled, Polar Vortex Brings May Snow and Freeze Warnings to New York and New England. Now, folks, pandemic, snow in May, come on. If you've been considering moving to South Florida, contact us at info@blueboxrv.com. We want to help make that happen for your business. We'll help you. We'll even assemble a great residential team to help locate your staff and yourselves wonderful housing, which by the way is probably at 50% on the dollar compared to what you pay in New York. Unquestionable blast felt from Maine to Manhattan. Chill coincides with Vermont reopening's outdoor pursuits. So what a coincidence. So polar vortex hits New York. You've got snow in May. Come on. We're already opening our beaches. We've been in shorts. We've never taken our shorts off, frankly, throughout the whole season, and you're having snow. Quoting from the article, some higher elevation areas in northern New York State and New England reported snowfall accommodations up to the 10 inches, while traces of snow were seen along the coast from Maine to Boston as far south as Manhattan. And I don't mean to make light of your snow in May, but it doesn't have to be that way. You could come join us here in South Florida. We're very happy to help you do that. The wintry weather came 2 days after Vermont began to lift restrictions on tennis, golf, and other outdoor activities that have been imposed to curb the coronavirus outbreak. Phil Scott, the state's governor, tweeted sympathy for Vermonters frustrated by the weather following weeks of being inside. I know snow on 9th of May isn't a welcome sight for many Vermonters, just as we were cautiously allowing outdoor recreation to get going again, he wrote. But this is just a snapshot in time. Just like better weather is ahead, better days will come as well. We'll get through this together. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. Temperatures were expected to dip below 30 degrees Fahrenheit from midnight through Sunday morning. This is Mother's Day weekend in parts of New Jersey and New York, and a freeze warning was issued from Saturday night until Sunday morning in parts of Pennsylvania. And the same Mother's Day weekend, the mayor of Naples, or the county mayor, closed the beaches down because there were so many Floridians enjoying the beach. Thanks a lot. But again, just another sign of why, if you're still in New York and you've been considering moving to South Florida, please come down. Please contact us. We want to help make that a reality. I can't think of a better place to run your business than in sunny South Florida. So that's this week's coverage of the commercial real estate news. Again, the cycles are slowing down, which is great. And we'll transition to a weekly instead of a bi-weekly look at coronavirus and commercial real estate. If you have an office lease or an office landlord in South Florida, we want to hear from you. We're here to help. Contact us again. Visit blueboxrv.com. If you want to learn more about commercial real estate while we're all still working from home for whoever knows how long, maybe another week or two. Don't forget, I've published a book on commercial real estate titled Don't Sign the Lease. So if you're negotiating with your landlord, before you get into the next lease, please learn answers to 10 common questions of commercial real estate and how to avoid pitfalls when signing a lease through this book. It's on discount now during coronavirus. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever books are purchased. Help the show and get a copy of the book and learn about commercial real estate. And before we close, let's go to God's Word. I want to read from the book of Proverbs today, and I read this recently with my son, and I needed to hear it because working from home is not the same when we're in a routine of getting up early, heading to the gym, breakfast, to the office, and pounding it. It's not been the same working from home. We're waking up maybe a little bit later. We are taking more breaks. We're just not functioning the same, and that's understood. But this was a wake-up call to me from God's Word. And I wanted to share it with you. This is from Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11. Go to the ant, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. Great reminder, the wisdom of Solomon in the book of Proverbs. And frankly, whenever I sleep in, this proverb just wakes me up. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. It's coming. It's coming. If we settled in and we rest too long and we sleep, and God says, look at the ant. Look at these little creatures. They don't have any generals. They don't have a DC, Washington DC, and mayors telling them how to do it and what to do. They do their business, and they gather food, and they have plenty, and they do their work, and they don't complain. And we need to be like that. We need to look at the ant. We need to consider. We need to ponder. We need to look at it. We can consider it. Look at the birds. We have a wonderful backyard, and we constantly see birds, little twigs setting up their nest for spring and so forth. And so God's creation is there for us to study and to look at and to be inspired upon. And ultimately, we don't stop there. We're to look at and be inspired upon and to be in awe of the God of creation and give him worship. So a little wisdom from the book of Proverbs. I hope that helps you. And listen, if you hear this and you're trying to sleep in, and in your mind you hear Jorge Morales saying, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like an armed man. If that helps get you out of bed, then praise God. Thank you. Thank you. Let me know if that helps. I know it's been helping me and trying to snap me back to get back to normal. Well, that's it for Coronavirus and Commercial Real Estate, May 15th edition. Look for us next week, God willing. We've got more podcasts coming out through the Don't Sign the Lease podcast soon, so stay tuned. And again, we're happy to be your commercial real estate voice for South Florida so that you can focus on your business and respond to the trends. That's why we do this. We hope it's helping you out. And again, until we talk again, stay safe, trust in God, be well. We'll get through this together. Good day.